Africa is rich in natural resources ranging from crude oil, natural gas, minerals, forests, and wildlife. The continent holds a huge proportion of the world's natural resources, both renewables and non-renewables. In sub-Saharan Africa, more than 70% of people depend on forests and woodlands for a living. For instance, Africa has 30% of the world's mineral reserves, 8% of global natural gas, 12% of oil reserves, 40% of its gold, and 80 to 90% of its chromium and platinum. Africa has roughly 65% of the world's arable land and 10% of its internal renewable freshwater sources. Its fisheries are estimated to be worth $24 billion, and the continent boasts the second largest tropical forest in the world. These are just some of the resources that make up Africa's vast reserves of natural capital, the environmental assets that, if managed properly, could drive the continent's transformation. But simply extracting these resources will not be enough to bring long-lasting change. If current population and consumption trends continue, humanity will need the equivalent of 2 Earths to support itself by 2030. This is clearly not viable in a world where climate change will make it even harder for the natural world to provide for our basic needs. Experts warn that instead of simply extracting natural resources and exploiting natural capital, there is need to start managing the resources sustainably.
When you say Africa is endowed with natural resources, and it is true in my own country, Uganda, we say Uganda is a country gifted by nature because you have gold, you have oil, you have water, you have fish, you have forestry, you have all these. These are natural resources, but what is their value? What is the value? As a stock, what is the measurement of this stock? First, we begin answering questions. What are these natural resources? Just list them. Let's have a stock of these natural resources. Second, how are they measured? How can I measure them to determine their value? Unless you put a number. And then how are they used? How are they being used? And what benefit are they being put? These questions are very important. Is there in the national accounting system of a Ministry of Finance, you could trace the value of, for purposes of argument, water, forest, geology, air. Where can I have this number for me to be able to say, for this stock to be sustainably used today, we must use it at this rate, and we must add value to this asset for the future generations.
Africa alone could save as much as $103 billion every year by harnessing its natural capital in a sustainable way. Money that could then be pumped back into alleviating poverty, providing access to clean energy, and improving education and health. A significant share of these precious resources is lost through illegal activities. In addition, sub-Saharan Africa currently spends $35 billion every year on food imports, a vast amount when you consider that only 3.5 million hectares out of a possible 240 million hectares of land suitable for wetland rice cultivation have been exploited. For instance, Africa loses an estimated $195 billion annually of its natural capital through illicit financial flows, illegal logging, illegal trade in wildlife, unregulated fishing, illegal mining, environmental degradation and loss. These activities continue to happen in the continent despite the efforts taken to address them.
It is vital for our countries, first and foremost, to ensure that we have the appropriate governance mechanisms, both at the local level, the national, and the regional level. That is key in the sustainable use of our natural resources and in harnessing our natural resources. If we don't have the appropriate structures in place, then our people will continue to experience poverty. And this is why Africa, as you may have heard, has adopted the Gaborone Declaration.
Africa states, through the African Ministerial Conference on the Environment sessions, acknowledged that Africa's natural capital underpins the continent's economy and is a gateway that has immense potential to transform the continent through sustainable investments. Africa's resources, if well harnessed and utilized, can be invested in implementing the 2030 Agenda, Agenda 2063, and the Paris Agreement. These agendas outline specific challenges facing the continent and note priority areas of interventions for the continent in addressing these challenges.
There is a lack of working across sectors. You cannot develop an urban policy without getting in the people working on water, on energy, and on other natural resources, and so on and so forth. So working across sectors is, again, key in achieving sustainable development. Otherwise, which is the case now, you have environment is happening in a silo, and then other sectoral policies are being developed in isolation from environment, social dimension, and taking into consideration the other sectoral development policies.
The Africa Ministerial Conference on the Environment Declaration on Africa's Natural Capital calls for policy action and partnerships at national, regional, and global level to reverse current natural capital losses in Africa. Figures show that degraded ecosystems cost Africa up to $68 billion annually, while annual post-harvest food losses ate up $4 billion from Africa's agriculture sector. The biggest financial leakage was in illicit financial flows, which account for a huge financial loss at about $50 billion annually.
Unless we tackle the issues of corruption, and we're serious about promoting accountability, inclusivity, and openness, then we will never realize our aspirations and our dreams. And I'm pleased to say that a growing number of African countries are now members of the EITI, the Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative. And this is the way we need to go. We need to be more accountable to our people, and we need to ensure that the natural resources, our natural capital, goes back to provide for social services in our respective jurisdictions. But the bottom line is we have to be more accountable to our people.
There are vested interests of different stakeholders which has to be addressed. People in high places or in the private sector, they have an interest in maintaining the status quo. And because achieving sustainable development for them may mean that they lose power, they lose financial resources, then they have to be addressed, and we have to acknowledge that, and we have to deal with them. Transparency is key, accountability is key to achieve sustainable development. I think these are all, and we acknowledge all of that, and I think a number of African countries now are taking steps to address this. Africa, and we all know, is the richest continent on the globe. Yet, unfortunately, we're still the poorest. Something is wrong.
The economic incentives for Africa to better manage its natural resources are compelling, as the continent alone could annually save as much as $103 billion, money that could fund development programs.
If we look at the major challenges of Africa, we can see that energy is a major challenge. We can also see that youth and employment is a major challenge. Harnessing in a sustainable way the natural capital is a great opportunity to really promote sustainable energy. It is a great opportunity to create jobs and green jobs, because transition to green economy should go hand in hand with the sustainable harnessing of natural capital. We need law enforcement. The commitment, the political will is there. What is missing is technology, the deployment of technology, and affordable and adaptable technology for local ownership.
The United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has highlighted renewable energy as one of the key solutions for coping with climate change. Africa has a great opportunity to make a progressive clean switch from fossil fuels to renewables, as it boasts of ample sunshine and wind which do not emit any greenhouse gases or pollution into the atmosphere. In addition to its importance to climate change, there is another compelling reason to develop renewable resources in Africa, and that is rapidly growing energy demand.